China's AI ecosystems are truly global. Chinese neural networks don't generate everything out of blocks. And you talk to something like a hologram, or a large screen maybe, and you just speak to it as if it were a human. A human still remains as an editor, and as an editor, a human will stay relevant for a long time. It's just that we won't need so many editors anymore.
Meet Aleksandr Sboev, Associate Professor at Qingdao University, a PhD in Chinese linguistics and a China studies expert with more than 15 years of research. And for the past several years, his main research area is the AI industry in China. You heard it right. Today we're talking about Chinese AI models. What is happening in China's AI ecosystem and large language model market? Who the main players are and what solutions they offer? How Chinese companies adopt AI in real business scenarios? Whether and how foreign companies can use Chinese AI solutions? And who is leading the LLM race, China or the US? If you're interested in artificial intelligence and want to understand what China does and where its AI industry is heading, you will find this conversation very interesting. Let's begin.
I've been working at Qingdao University for almost 3 years. I teach Russian there. Before that, I worked for 10 years teaching Chinese, and after coming to China, basically these last 2 or 3 years, I've been closely researching Chinese LLMs. In general, the development of AI in China is very interesting, because in China you can see this development. It's everywhere. It's basically in all spheres: everyday life, not everyday life, business, manufacturing, and so on. So now my main research interest, and just my interest as a person, as a user, is Chinese neural nets.
So let's describe the big picture. What is happening with AI in China right now? What are the main products and players in China?
I think we can divide the whole AI landscape, or everything related to artificial intelligence, into several major blocks. In China, there are large-scale AI ecosystems. Most often, these are partnerships between major IT companies, such as Tencent, Baidu, Alibaba, iFlyTech, ByteDance, and others, and a partner company that needs to implement AI solutions into real production processes. These solutions can be applied to agriculture, manufacturing, or virtually any type of industry, whether light industry or heavy industry. What happens is that these corporations essentially create an internal ecosystem inside a company, with artificial intelligence fully integrated into all processes. That is the first block, the first way this development happens. The second block consists of multimodal large language models. These are similar to ChatGPT or Gemini, but Chinese versions developed by Chinese corporations. There is an important nuance here. There are many such models, hundreds of them. Some are created by the largest Chinese corporations, and others are developed by startups. For example, DeepSeek is not a traditional giant like Alibaba, which has been doing internet commerce for decades. These models are generally available to ordinary users. There are subscription models and paid plans, but in principle it works very similarly to ChatGPT. And finally, there are narrow, highly specialized solutions. These are specific LLMs designed for very narrow tasks. For example, a separate neural network dedicated only to image generation, or AI agents designed for a single function, such as writing essays, composing advertising copy, or handling one specific workflow. So I would say that these 3 blocks form the core structure of AI in China today.
Unlike Western models like ChatGPT, where there is essentially just one chat interface and not much else, Chinese models often separate these agents into distinct sections. Why do you think that is? Do you think it fits better with Chinese user perception or mentality?
Yes, I really think that for Chinese users this approach is simply easier to understand. When you have a single input field where you can write anything, you can basically ask for everything at once. For us, that feels convenient. You don't need to navigate anywhere, you just type and it does everything. But for Chinese users, it seems more natural to enter a specific tab and clearly understand. Here I generate code, here I generate video, here I write advertising copy. There is also another important point. In many Chinese neural networks, these separate tabs include built-in guidance on how to write prompts. Everyone talks about how important prompt quality is. For example, in Baidu's ERNIE bot, you often only need to input keywords, the topic, maybe one additional word, the desired length of the text, or the style of an image. The system automatically builds the full prompt for you. I think this is especially convenient for beginners.
So if we compare Western models and Chinese models, what do you see as their advantages and disadvantages?
For me, the key advantage depends on what you're looking for and what data you want the model to rely on. For example, as a China specialist, if I need information about China, about the Chinese language or Chinese context in general, I know Chinese models will usually find it better because they are trained on Chinese data sources. DeepSeek is the simplest example. Even though it launched with an international version, it's still a Chinese model, and its underlying data is Chinese. The same applies to Qwen and many other Chinese models. If you ask the same question in Western models, you will also get an answer, and it might be high quality, but they are not always as deeply immersed in Chinese content. And it works the other way too. If you want broader global or Western topics, it makes sense to search in Western models. That's about search and information retrieval. For simple functions like image generation, it can be more about preference, what style you like, what results you personally find better. But there's another practical point. Chinese models often have restrictions, so they won't generate or even translate certain things. I didn't mention this yesterday, but even simple translation can be blocked. For example, if you include names of political figures or national leaders, many Chinese models won't translate it. Even if you write something like, "A national leader met another national leader," like Xi Jinping met Trump, it will refuse. The workaround is to use pronouns. He arrived, met with him, and then manually edit the final text afterward.
So it's censorship.
Yes, for sure. Even DeepSeek, which seems global and public-facing, still refuses these things. It will respond politely and say something like, "Let's change the topic of the conversation." It's interesting, when a new Chinese model appears, and they appear very often, I run a personal benchmark. I ask it to generate an image. For example, generate me Xi Jinping and Trump drinking tea. Western models generate it easily. Both are sitting here, and they could be any other political figure on their place. But Chinese models refuse and say they can't create that image.
What about generating just one Trump alone?
No.
So no politics at all?
No, they avoid politics completely. There is another interesting detail. Even mentioning national identities can cause refusals. For example, this person is Chinese, this one is Hungarian, these are Spanish. Very often, the model will refuse to do anything with such content. In a way, I think this is understandable, even right thing to do. Chinese neural networks, and perhaps Chinese culture more broadly, tend to avoid sensitive topics entirely. The logic is, better not touch it at all. That is a part of Chinese way of thinking. So again, it depends on what you need. If you want a specific image of a public figure, you should use Western tools like ChatGPT. Chinese models will not help you there. If you just need general image or video generation, then it becomes a matter of taste. For example, Alibaba's Tongyi Wanxiang video generation is extremely strong. You don't need professional skills. You simply describe what you want in plain text, and it produces very high-quality results. Yes, Western models can do this as well. There are many benchmarks comparing them, but the results vary. Some say one is better, others say the opposite. I think it mostly comes down to personal preference.
So, from a technological standpoint, you wouldn't say that one side is clearly better than the other.
Yes, for a regular user, and I'm not an expert in visual too, and I don't really go deep into pixels or ultra-high image quality and all that, but I honestly don't see a strong difference in visual result between top Western models and top Chinese models. To me, they feel pretty comparable.
And maybe, in terms of real-world use, are there ways AI is used in China that you don't really see in the West?
That's a tough one, because in China, there are basically two big layers. One layer is where AI tools are available to everyone, and in that sense, it's quite similar to what we know about Western models. But there's also a whole industrial layer. In China, and in the US, and in Europe, it's used very actively. We just don't see it much, because corporations usually don't share those details publicly. The information I found about industrial use cases, industry-specific AI, is mostly shown by the tech providers who sell those solutions. They say, look, we work with this company and that one. It's basically marketing. If you want the same thing, work with us. The industrial company itself usually doesn't say, we work with Huawei, we work with Tencent, because they don't really need to. That visibility is more important for the IT providers and for the vendors who provide the services. I think the West is similar. They collaborate and they do it quietly. I'm not super deep into that side, to be honest, because I'm more focused on China as a topic. But I believe the pattern is quite similar. There is a Chinese-specific feature of neural nets, actually. Here I'd probably take the starting point of this whole active phase of spreading general AI that's really used by everyone. It's live streaming. Because for the past several years, live streams are basically the engine of progress and consumer market in China for everything. E-commerce, internet users, it is really everywhere. So a lot of sales in China are built on streams on TikTok, on Douyin, and on content creation like that. Live streaming business in China is many times bigger than in other countries, even comparing to Southeast Asia, the closest region to China in this case. So here you need AI tools too. You need a lot of AI. You need a narrowly specialized neural network for each social network. One for image generation, another to write text for you, a third for something else. Of course, there are many AI tools for these needs, obviously starting with products made by ByteDance themselves. When a person runs a live stream and sells something on TikTok, well, in Chinese it's Douyin, the TikTok version, they have a neural net that, first, obviously gives them data about where, what, who's watching. And these are very precise figures and stats. How many people are watching, who are they, where they are from, and so on. The neural net can even tell whether users are satisfied with what you're showing right now. It analyzes comments in real time, number of likes, the frequency of reactions, and gives streamers prompts. Smile more, or use phrases like this, change the subject, direct tips on how to run the stream. So yeah, in this area, live streaming, selling through live broadcasts, I think the Chinese have really moved far ahead.
How soon will we get neural nets that can digitize, let's say, an avatar host, and it would be able to sell things like a human streamer? For example, like in my other business in Singapore, where we have streaming sales on TikTok, on Facebook, and so on.
Honestly, I think it's coming very soon. The whole digital avatar field has moved forward a lot over the last year. Sometimes you watch something and sure, some people can tell it's not a human, but there are already models that create a person who looks fully alive. You really can't tell the difference from real. And the lip sync part, the mouth movements, the synchronization of lips with speech, works well in Chinese, English, or other popular languages. You can actually see the words perfectly sync with the lips, and it feels natural. The mouth moves correctly, the facial expression is there. Many Chinese companies are pushing hard in this direction. And yes, one clear direction is replacing streamers with digital avatars. It's very realistic. For example, an avatar is speaking and promoting a product, and at the same time another system connects, a chatbot that writes comments, and it can even run the transactional part in parallel.
So it's like they communicate, and the deal happens at the real time.
Yes, that's absolutely possible. I really believe that within the next 2 or 3 years it can become mass market, at least in China. The main question is whether people are ready, viewers I mean. That's the real question. Especially because from September 1st this year, China introduced rules requiring labels for AI-generated content. So, in theory, an avatar should clearly indicate that it's not a real person. It's still a new regulation. Probably it will look literally like a visible "created by AI" label. With static images, it's simple. There's a watermark somewhere, you can see it. But for real-time digital avatars, live streams, interactive situations, I personally haven't seen how they'll implement it consistently. And the question is, if a viewer clearly understands it's not a human, will they still be willing to talk to it and make a purchase through it? Not a contract, but just buying. Some people might say, no, why would I talk to a robot? The emotional feel might be different, not the same. But at the same time, these avatars will get better and better, and at some point it will be almost impossible to differentiate from human. And for some reason, I might be wrong, it seems like in the West, this digital avatar idea in everyday consumer use, not industrial use, is less developed. In China, besides live streaming, avatars are also used in banks and public service places as assistants, like tax offices, insurance, and similar services. You walk in, and instead of a person saying, "What do you need? Take a ticket," you interact with a hologram or a large screen. You speak normally, and it understands you. You say, "I want to do this and this and this," and it directs you, even telling you which counter or window to go to. This is already being rolled out in banks and some public institutions, as far as I know. It feels like you trust it more, like you believe it really understood you and you did everything correctly. Because if you just type, scan, upload documents, then 3 days later someone might reply, "You uploaded something wrong." But here it's real time, and it's almost like talking to a person. It checks you immediately and says, "Yes, correct, everything is fine." And it can even tell you, "In X days you will get the final answer," because it knows you submitted everything properly.
Yesterday, you mentioned a lot of cases about how Chinese use AI in different industries. In general, what business problems do neural networks solve in China?
So yesterday we broke everything down to 3 main blocks. The first one is agriculture. In general, everyone already knows about drones in agriculture. That's been around for a while, and it works in many countries. But here, it's more about very practical things. For example, in livestock farming, AI can literally count animals in enclosures, monitor them. And another big area is disease prevention, or rather, detecting whether animals are getting sick. These neural networks can, or at least try to, determine if something is wrong with an animal. I don't know how accurate it is in percentage terms, but the idea is that through cameras, they can already see that something isn't right. It's hard to compare it directly to something else, but there are working examples. For instance, Qwen has projects like this, in cooperation with partners including Baidu. It also works with insects. For example, in forestry, you can take images, identify what kind of insect it is, determine whether it's a pest, estimate the scale of damage, and understand how to deal with it, what methods to use, and at what time. So you don't have to, say, spray everything all year round unnecessarily. From what I've seen, in agriculture this actually works quite well. But again, this is usually only possible through cooperation with giants like Baidu, Huawei, Alibaba, because startups simply can't handle such volumes and scale. Then there's manufacturing. Jan gave examples related to the automotive industry, and here, of course, cooperation is built as a full system. It's not just about automating factory work. We already know that assembly lines have been using robots for years. What's new is system-wide monitoring. Defect detection, for example. A model sees that a part has an issue, immediately rejects it, and it gets redirected to another branch of the production line. Alibaba, for example, has cooperation with SAIC, where parts no longer move along a traditional conveyor. Instead, robots move between islands of components. The robot knows when to take parts somewhere, when to bring them back to storage, when to deliver them to another area. And in some aspects, this approach has proven to be even more efficient than classic conveyor-based production. That's one part. AI helps directly inside the production process, but within the same ecosystem, it also helps analyze production volumes overall, analyzing the market, identifying shortages, understanding which parts are needed more, how many cars should be produced, where demand is higher, where it's lower. It analyzes the market and gives recommendations. Then there's warehouse analysis. Which warehouse has free capacity? Which one should be used? How to optimize logistics? For example, how to deliver products faster and more efficiently to clients in specific cities or regions. And the final block is after-sales service, service maintenance, support, where people are still involved, of course, but AI models are increasingly used there as well. And this isn't limited to the automotive industry. I think in many other industries, aluminum production for example, it's roughly the same pattern, from fine-tuning production and defect detection to sales and logistics. Then there's the social sector, banking and finance. This area is also developing very actively, but the focus there is slightly different. If we take insurance as a concrete example, I would divide it into three main aspects. The first is product development. AI helps design insurance products. For example, a life insurance policy, what to include, what to exclude, and how to optimize it so that it's good for the client and profitable for the company. The second block is employee training. This is what I showed yesterday, training and testing, where an employee interacts with a bot. The bot plays the role of a client who says, "I want to buy insurance," and the employee has to persuade this virtual person, offer options, and make proposals. There are many scenarios. One scenario is a client who says, "I want to buy insurance, but I don't know what I need. Please advise me." Another scenario is a dissatisfied client who wants to leave the insurance company, and the employee has to retain them. The digital avatar helps here. You interact with it, then analyze what you said, where you made a mistake, what could have been phrased better, what should be improved. And then there's a third scenario, handling payouts. In this case, it's no longer training. The insurance event has already happened, and AI helps calculate everything. Different technologies are involved here, including OCR. It scans documents, receipts, insurance policies, extracts information like policy numbers and types of incidents, and then analyzes whether the incident matches the coverage. But in the end, the final decision is still made by a human. AI does the analysis, interacts with the client, and then passes the information to a specific employee who approves it. But the process is significantly faster than if a human checked everything manually. And according to company statements, the accuracy of AI in determining payouts, whether the payout is correct and what the amount should be, is often even higher than if a human did it alone. This kind of hybrid approach can get very close to near-perfect accuracy.
Being in China, it feels everywhere that all big, medium, and most small businesses are set up for digitalization. Everyone is thinking how to use it, how to implement it, and actually make steps towards it. Obviously, they choose Chinese AI solutions. When foreign companies do the same, they have a choice. There are Western AI models that everyone knows about, but there is a huge market of Chinese models. Can foreign companies use Chinese models if they think it fits them better?
I think yes, in principle it is possible, but here the bigger question is probably legislation. Because if you open the website of a large global corporation, Alibaba, Baidu, they actively showcase their partnerships, but usually those partners are Chinese companies. At the same time, everywhere they say, "If you want to cooperate with us, get in touch. Here's our phone number." They are ready to work together, ready to bring their technologies into production. But I'm not sure whether regulations will actually allow the largest corporations like Huawei, Baidu, Alibaba, ByteDance to cooperate freely with foreign companies. Because in reality, that would mean providing Chinese datasets to foreign enterprises, and that's where restrictions may appear. There's a good example here. There is a platform called Qwen. Qwen is basically a platform for building your own AI agents, and it has two versions, a Chinese version and an international version. If you go to the Chinese version, qwen.cn, you build an AI agent, and the system offers you different underlying models to choose from. And there you'll see Chinese engines, DeepSeek for sure, and probably ERNIE as well, though I don't remember all of them exactly. But DeepSeek is definitely there. If you switch to the international version, then the situation is completely different. There is no DeepSeek there at all. Instead, it offers engines like ChatGPT, Gemini, and other Western models.
Languages. Yesterday you showed that translations into other languages can suffer, except maybe English. Though English can also be imperfect, but you clearly see the trend. So you and I can speak Chinese. We've spent years to study it. Will there be a time when you can say that studying language is not necessary anymore? Will AI replace interpreters and studying languages pointless? When do you think that might happen?
I think it also depends on the level of translation and on the context. For example, in diplomacy, you will still need a human, simply because certain information must not get into shared databases or into the open network. In those areas, people will definitely remain. But if we talk about large numbers, about the massive amount of people whose work is only translation, then yes, I think that number will gradually decrease. Slowly, step by step, it will become smaller and smaller. And this applies not only to translators, it applies to almost all professions. I think programmers are already seriously worried about their jobs as well. You can already just say, write me code for this and that, and the system produces it from plain text. If we return specifically to translators, of course what we have now is not perfect. It's far from perfect, even with the best neural networks available today. But in the English-Chinese language pair, the quality is already quite good. It easily covers 80%, maybe even 90% of needs, not only everyday use, but business use as well. I didn't manage to show it to you yesterday, but there are already systems for simultaneous translation. Most of them, by the way, are not free. Colleagues have told me and shown examples from academic conferences where a speaker presents in English and at the same time a Chinese translation appears on a large screen, and the quality is actually quite decent. Of course, this is not yet a mass solution. It's still expensive. Not even expensive as a service, but expensive to implement. You need very powerful engines, very strong technologies. But we are moving forward at such a pace that this will spread into all areas. Some jobs will be replaced, some positions will disappear, and new jobs will appear, jobs related to working with artificial intelligence. That's something we simply need to accept. At the same time, it's important to separate translators from people who simply know the language. Let me explain what I mean. Imagine cooperation between a Chinese company and, say, an American company. Flying from the US to China takes time. So the American side finds a person in China and says, "Do you know Chinese? Go and check how the production of my product is going. We have signed a contract." In this case, the person is needed not as a translator. They are needed because they understand English, understand the client's requirements, can go to a Chinese factory, talk to Chinese partners in Chinese, see everything on the ground, and then come back with a summary for the client. People like that, I think, will be needed for a long time. This kind of human communication is not going anywhere. But written translators, especially those working not with literary texts, but with everyday correspondence and routine business communication, here, of course, neural networks are more than ready. And honestly, I'm not afraid of this at all. I'm not worried. I think this is normal. We just need to get used to it, understand it, and learn how to work with these tools. For now, a human still remains as an editor, and a human will remain an editor for quite a long time. It's just that we won't need so many editors anymore, because if a neural network does the work quickly, you then have time to focus on proper editing, and that's completely enough.
So you're saying this as someone who's been doing it for years. You're an experienced professional. But if you were a young student today, would you still go and study a language?
That's a difficult question. Probably yes. Today, in 2025, I'd still go and learn a language. But I wouldn't make it my only field of expertise, like, I can only speak Chinese. If I were choosing a major now, I wouldn't do that. I'd treat the language as an add-on to another skill. For example, programming plus Chinese, or agriculture plus Chinese. Drone operations is growing fast, and in China they need many people in that field. If you also know Chinese, you can join a company, communicate with colleagues, understand tasks, and then configure and operate the drone. That's where the language becomes valuable. And of course, you don't learn a language in 1 or 2 years. You learn it for life. It depends on the person, their motivation and discipline, and whether they can push it to a professional level.
So basically, the formula remains the same: industry expertise plus a language.
Yes, exactly. That combination. And I still don't think a neural network will fully replace it in the next 10 years.
All right, so if we're talking about the next 10 years, or maybe the next 3 to 5, where are Chinese AI models going? What's the direction?
I think there are 2 directions. The first is robotics, AI in a physical form, embodied AI. This area looks very promising in the next 3 to 5 years. And then, well, the bigger future, the machines rising idea, and so on. We are moving in that direction. It's basically AI that exists not only on a screen, but in the real world. The second direction is the virtual one, AI as software. And here I think it's more about social spread, AI becoming truly everywhere, so that any person can solve everyday tasks faster, not even with AI as something special, but simply because it's quicker. You don't need to wait in line to talk to a human. You ask a question and get an answer immediately. And that can be anything: applying for a bank card, buying train tickets, booking a flight, solving routine issues. So one direction is more technical and physical, and the other is mass everyday use for everyone.
And in industry, in business?
In industry, it already exists. I think it will simply keep improving. More sectors will join, but the logic is the same. It's already working. As computing power grows, it will scale up what already exists. It will expand, but my point is, it's already here. And in China, it's already quite advanced, and it will just become even bigger.
So overall, Chinese and Western models are roughly on the same level, except maybe Chinese are stronger in some generation tasks. Looking ahead, do you think Chinese models will overtake Western ones?
In terms of quantity, definitely. I think they already have, even now. That's what we discussed yesterday at the lecture. You can look at how many Chinese models are officially registered, both base models and derived models. Registration is mandatory, and by the summer 2025, there were already around 450 plus base models alone. That's a huge number, considering this field is still relatively new. And if you look at rankings of AI apps that actively use AI, in the top 10, about half are often Chinese. So in terms of numbers, yes, they've already surpassed. When it comes to quality, I don't think it will be one-sided. It will be more like this: one side does something better, the other catches up. Then the other side improves, and the first one catches up. They will compete. I don't believe in the West loses, America gives up scenario. I don't think they will just say, okay, fine, everyone switch to Chinese models because they're better. No. This is a new market and a new competition. Everyone understands that this is where things are going. And right now, we basically have two main leaders, the US and China. Everyone else is still catching up. I think this will remain the trend for the near future. But if you ask me to choose between them, like, who wins? I wouldn't. I don't think it's that simple.
And in general, how do you think AI will change Chinese society of the future?
I'm a bit worried here, actually. Worried about people in China, if I can put it that way. About communication. About simple, basic human communication. I've mentioned this before. Many Chinese AI agents today model human-to-human interaction scenarios. So what happens is that people first rehearse their communication with artificial intelligence, and only after that they go and talk to real people. This can be romantic relationships. They try flirting first. They try just talking, asking someone out. Or it can be very everyday situations. For example, I mentioned this before, how to persuade someone in real life. Like when you come back to a dormitory at 2 in the morning, the guard doesn't let you in, and you need to talk to her, explain something, somehow convince her. People first test these situations with AI models, and only then go out and communicate in the real world. I'm afraid it could reach a point where people simply won't be able to communicate without first discussing everything with neural networks. There are a lot of AI tools now that assume you just call them and talk to them. You open the app, there's an instant call, and you just talk to it like it's your friend. For me, that feels like too much. People need real friends, real communication, and in this area, honestly, I don't really understand how this should be regulated. I don't quite see what kind of rules or limits should exist here. That's what worries me. At the same time, AI will keep spreading, and if it helps solve problems faster and more efficiently, and in many areas it already does things faster and more efficiently than humans, we have to acknowledge that. So let it develop. It will move in this direction, in two main directions, industrial and social. In industry, everything is fine. Human control remains, just with fewer people involved. That's normal, that's how it should be. But in the social sphere, even though it should also develop, there probably need to be some additional mechanisms from the other side to somehow regulate the relationship between humans and artificial intelligence.
And what about business? I mean, AI is being adopted so actively in Chinese business. I don't know if you have this feeling, but when you come to China, compared to many other countries where I've been, I lived in Southeast Asia for many months recently, it just feels like China is a completely different level in terms of efficiency, optimization, productivity, all of that. Don't you get the sense that these very efficient, highly productive Chinese corporations that are moving onto the international market, over time, they will kill local businesses in other countries? Many of them just can't compete with Chinese transnational corporations. Not the same level of AI, not the same level of resources, and so on. That Chinese business will, in a way, start pushing local businesses in other countries out, and local businesses will keep losing more and more.
Businesses in other countries will try to protect themselves through regulatory measures and with help of the government. For example, the way some countries are now trying to ban TikTok. I think we'll see similar legislative actions aimed at preventing Chinese businesses from overpowering local industries. Most likely, this kind of protection will come from the top, at least for now, because, objectively, many countries are losing to China. That's obvious. And in that situation, the only real defense is government regulation and legislation. How effective that will be and how long it will work, only time will tell. But one thing is clear. AI adoption in business in China is much more advanced than in most other countries. That's undeniable. Even an ordinary user can see it. And when you live in China for a while, you get so used to this level of efficiency that when you move to another country, or even just visit one, you suddenly think, how do you even live like this? We already feel like we're living in the future.
So to avoid falling behind, local businesses have a choice now. Although business usually prefers to act independently from state, but they can only either rely on the government or they need to look for partners, most likely partners among Chinese companies, or maybe Western ones, and enter this space through partnerships.
Yes, I think this brings us back to what we were saying about partnerships between Chinese AI models and foreign companies. In reality, this is already happening to some extent. I remember a recent World Economic Forum session where representatives from Alibaba said that they are, in principle, open to cooperation. I don't fully understand how the internal structure of such cooperation would work, but most likely they simply wouldn't share sensitive data openly. At the same time, they are willing to provide their computing power and technological capabilities because they have them. So this kind of cooperation is possible. But then the question of dependency arises. In a way, it's similar to energy resources. One side becomes dependent on another. Here, it's technological dependence. And I think China will consciously move toward making other countries dependent on its technological capabilities, as part of its broader national development strategy.
You've basically just confirmed the same thing that we discussed earlier with an expert in automotive industry, Wang Gaoge. I asked her similar questions. Can other countries, for example, a foreign investor who wants to develop a local car brand, say in Saudi Arabia or the UAE, work with Chinese car makers to create that local brand? She said that some Chinese car makers won't accept producing under another brand. Some will, but overall, cooperation is feasible. But the next question is technology transfer. And I asked her, will all the technologies actually move to Saudi Arabia, the UAE, or elsewhere in the client's country? Or will China keep some of them? And the answer is that China will keep the key technologies and never loses control over it. So they will provide production, but the technology itself, the brain of the system, stays with China.
Absolutely, that's exactly how it works. Even if we're not talking about China specifically, but about companies and states in general, everyone keeps their newest technologies for themselves. Technologies that are already mature, that they've moved past and no longer consider critical, they can sell or transfer to other countries where those technologies are still seen as an advantage. China will do exactly the same as all the others. They'll retain the core technologies, and once they feel they've passed a certain stage, they'll share what they consider no longer strategic with partner companies.
Thank you very much for coming, for giving the lecture, and for the interview. See you next time.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.